over to Dr. Deepti.
Good evening once again, everybody. So this is a platter which is very yummy to look at, but believe me, when the whole Viva Voce table is in front of you, it doesn't look this appreciating. There are lots of instruments, there are lots of drugs, lots of charts, lots of IOLs and trial frames, Maddox rod, you name it and it is there. So how do you go about it? Well, I just have 10 minutes. I cannot cover everything in this 10 minutes. So this is season 1 platter. One set of instruments, one set of drugs, one set of charts. I think in next season I'll be covering the rest of it and we'll go ahead further. So today's sets of instruments are pupil expanders, in which you're supposed to know B-hex ring, Malugian ring, iris hooks, Coghlan iris hooks. So why have I placed the B-hex ring first? It is our own Indian origin, designed by our own Indian ophthalmologist. B stands for his name, Dr. Suven Bhattacharjee. Hex, it is basically because hexagonal in shape, made up of polyamide. If you can see here, it has got 6 flanges. 3 flanges go below the iris and 3 flanges are above the iris. It can basically be put through a 1 mm incision and it dilates a pupil to about 5.5 to 6 millimeter. The next one I've placed is Malugian ring. Majority of the ophthalmologists around the world use Malugian ring, around the world. So why is it Malugian? It has been designed by Dr. Boris Malugian, made up of polypropylene. It has got 4 rings here. These 4 rings are what pulls the iris apart, and the quadrangular shape or the square shape which goes and opens up the iris. And so the iris, the pupil becomes nearly 6 millimeter and it can be inserted through a 2 mm incision. The next 2 basic instruments for pupil expansion, one is your disposable iris hooks. It comes in a batch of 5. So it is basically like your umbrella handle. You have got one small plastic ring over here which holds it, which is meant to tighten it. It can be inserted even through a side port, or you can just make one small 1 mm incision. 5 of it gives you nearly a pentagonal shape of opening of 5 to 6 millimeter iris. You can even use a 4 when you're doing a surgery. The last one is Coghlan iris hook. It is something like your long instrument, something like your dialer or a chopper, but the tip is like this. It is clover leaf shape. So it is based on push-pull mechanism. If the iris is engaged in the upper part, you push the iris and mechanically you're opening up the iris. Or if you want to constrict it, put it here, pull it, and you're mechanically constricting it. So basically it's mechanical pupil stretch. Complications like pupil atony can happen. Further, it can be used to position the IOL also after you have performed your iris dilatation. So if you know this much about this much basic about your pupil expanders, I think this should be enough. But then the most common questions asked if you get these instruments: what is IFIS, intraoperative floppy iris syndrome, which drugs cause it? You should be knowing your 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, that is tamsulosin, prazosin, and some finasteride and some antipsychotic drugs like donepezil, chlorpromazine. Then the next common question will be small pupil and cataract. How will you manage? Don't jump and tell B-hex ring and all. The basic thing is first pharmacological dilatation, intraoperatively, what drug you will be using, like adrenaline, the concentration, how does it act? Then viscodilatation, you can use cohesive viscoelastics like the Helon and sodium hyaluronate, and you can dilate. Final will be mechanical dilatation by using all these dilators. So if you end up with this, the next question may be name some other pupil dilators. You should be knowing all of these: ASIA pupil dilator, Greether, Beeler, and I-ring. So all of these are few some. Then, so this is done with today's sets of instruments. The next is drugs. So believe me, if it is 100% question, you will be asked to pick up one drug. And as Grover said just now, be systematic. Take down these 8 points, go from top to bottom. I think you won't miss any of the part of the drug. First, name the drug, because you're holding the drug in your hand. Obviously, you're supposed to tell the name of the drug and the concentration of the drug. Classify it, which pharmacological group it falls into, mechanism of the action, dosage, indications, tell the side effects. So obviously contraindications will come along with it. one special point with each drug, mention it off. I think it will catch the attention of the examiner, and it may bring you somewhere, it may distinguish you from the other postgraduates who are giving exam with you. So today I'm taking adrenergic antagonist, that is the beta blockers. So the protagonist of it, that is timolol. So if you can see there, how will I, if I have been given this, how will I go ahead with this? Take the 8 points. Sir, this is timolol mat 2.5%. It is an anti-glaucoma medication, non-selective beta blocker. It acts by antagonizing the catecholamine effect on the beta the ciliary epithelium. Hence, it reduces the aqueous production. It is available in two concentration, 0.25 and 0.5%. So based on the concentration, it can be used once or twice. Indications, it is used in ocular hypertension, open angle glaucoma, angle closure glaucoma, secondary glaucomas. Side effects, ocular and systemic side effects. Ocular side effects, most commonly allergic blepharoconjunctivitis, burning, stinging sensation, dry eyes, you can go ahead. Systemic, it exacerbates bronchospasm. So asthma can be exacerbated, hypotension, bradycardia, allergy, nausea, vomiting, and other systemic side effects. But if you mention the most important ones, even the CNS, like it can cause depression, sleepiness. So contraindications are bronchial asthma, COPD, sinus bradycardia, heart blocks. So, and what special point will you mention here? There is, you have to explain the short-term escape, long-term drift. It hardly took 50 seconds. I had timed myself when I did it at home. So if you tell this much continuously, then there is already impressed. You are systematic in your answer. You have told all the points. So what is left now? He may ask you which drugs are coexisting. He may ask you about the other anti-glaucoma medication like synergistic actions, which shouldn't be given in these conditions. They may go into other beta blockers also. I've just made a small mnemonic. The other beta blockers are almost the same as timolol. So you need not buy it once again. But betoxolol, B for B, it is selective beta 1 blocker. The rest all are non-selective beta blocker. So less bronchopulmonary side effect. We know that our bronchus has beta 2. So there is a less bronchopulmonary side effect as compared to timolol. C for C, cartiolol is having not, it doesn't have that lipid increasing effects as compared to timolol. So cholesterol friendly, can be used in cardiac patients. L for L, levobunolol, long half-life, longer acting. Metipranolol, I didn't get any mnemonic for this, but just remember, it can occasionally, it causes granulomatous anterior uveitis. I think with this, your theory answer for beta blockers are also done. If you remember this much, you can make up pages of it. So this was about the drugs. Remember the 8 points, you won't miss your drugs part of it. My last point of today, chart reading. So today I would go ahead with the Hess chart. So what would you do if at all you get a Hess chart? Again, go systematically. As I have explained here, you have to see both the Hess charts will be in front of you. First, see which is the smaller chart. So here, the left eye is smaller as compared to right eye. So the pathology is in the left eye. Now, second question, what is the pathology? So now look, where exactly is the line is supposed to come along this. If you can see here, there is a mark which is given. So you are supposed to follow that outer square or the pulled out square. But if you can see here, this is basically underacting. So which muscle does it correspond to? Superior oblique. If you are still in a doubt, look at the opposite eye. Contralateral synergistis overacting. That is your inferior rectus. Almost you have reached a diagnosis. Still in a doubt, look at the center point. This is the primary position of the eye. It should have been in the center of this square, but it is up. So that means this eye is hypertropic and this is hypo. So there is basically an L over R, left hypertropia with left superior oblique underaction with a overaction of contralateral synergist, that is your inferior rectus. So this is nothing but a left esophalcy. If somebody asks you how much degree of hypertropia, remember this each square is 5 degree. 5 degree, not prism diopter. That means it is 10 prism diopter. So here the dot which should have been here is slightly 1 square above, that means it is 5-degree hypertropia or 10 prism diopters of hypertropia. So this is a clear-cut case of left fourth nerve palsy. The next chart. So what do we go here? Now, first thing, what do we see? Which is the smaller chart? So obviously the pathology is in the right eye. So the chart is constricted superiorly, chart is constricted medially, chart is constricted inferiorly. It is only the lateral part which is acting. That means your lateral rectus and your sixth nerve is normal. Where do you get the medial rectus, superior rectus, inferior rectus under action? Obviously, it is your third cranial nerve palsy. You still have a doubt? Look at the center dot. It should have been here, but it is down and out. That means your eye is down and out with underaction of all the muscle with contralateral synergist overaction. So it is a clear-cut case of a right third nerve palsy. The next one is this. I think by now most of you are clear with your Hess chart, which is the smaller eye. The right eye is the pathology. Which muscle is underacting? The superior is normal, the medial is normal, the inferior is normal. It's basically the lateral is underacting. So it's a clear cut with overaction of contralateral synergist. That is your medial rectus is overacting. So this is a case of right sixth nerve palsy. The last chart for today. See, normally what happens, our eyes follow Hering's law or Sherrington's law for that aspect. It cannot be that my eyes are restricted, the activity of my eye is restricted superiorly and the activity of eye is restricted inferiorly also. So if something like this, which doesn't fit into any of your laws come in, then this is a case of mechanical restriction. It is known as pulled out chart, pulled over chart. So here there is a restricted activity of inferior rectus and upwards. So there is inferiorly also the eye is restricted. Superior movement is also restricted and the eye is slightly in hypoposition. This is actually a case of a blowout fracture with inferior rectus entrapment. So the most common charts, Hess charts, which will be kept in your exam is sixth nerve, third nerve, fourth nerve. If you clear these three, maybe blowout fracture and Brown's or thyroid eye disease. So that usually Brown's thyroid eye disease is less common, but nerve palsies you should be knowing. So the final questions, what will come? You should know the principle, the foveal projection, Hering's law, Sherrington's law, how is it done, where is it used in nerve palsies to prognosticate it, to treatment aspect of it. So those are some of the uses. Then you should, if it is a sixth nerve palsy, obviously they will ask you everything about muscle and anatomy and the sequelae of the muscle palsy. So I think with this, it is like a puzzle. I cannot finish the whole of the Viva Voce in one day. This was just for a platter for season 1 with basic instruments, drugs and some charts. Season 2 we'll come up with again few more instruments, drugs and the chart. And thank you Microvision, thank you KP sir. I think we will meet up in season 2 once again. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Deepti. That was very lucid. I think that the season 1, we look forward to for the season 2 so that we can cover all these Viva aspects, which is going to be so important. So we have the last 5 minutes of the program, wherein I think before I tell you how to read a perimetry chart, which is probably a quintessential part of every Viva table, I think all the senior examiners will agree that every student, when he goes to Viva, probably that is something where you have an chance to impress the examiner with the versatility and the kind of extensive knowledge that you actually have acquired during your 3 years. A case presentation will have a limited and a very exclusive discussion on a particular topic on which you may not be really very much conversant. But in a Viva, you have a platter, you can pick up anything, you can speak anything, and the examiner also has a liberty to digress, to divert to a different situation. If you do not know one instrument, you can ask the other. I think this is one situation where you can make up for all the deficiencies, number one. Or if you're already done well in your case presentation, you can probably score an extra